and hopefully Amber joins in the next few minutes. We can just get started. So thank you all for coming. I'm Mackenzie Feldman. I'm the Executive Director of Herbicide Free Campus. We are an organization that works with students and groundskeepers across the country to eliminate herbicides from schools. We got some of our staff members here, Eliza, Rose, Shayna, and Bridget's probably here somewhere. And yeah, we're really grateful and special that we have campaigns actually in all the states that these speakers are coming from. So there's some cool synergy there. And yeah, we're really excited to have this talk today. We really wanted to, there's just so much negativity happening in the world, so many crazy things, and we think it's really important to just carve out some time in the spirit of Earth Month to shed some light on some of the really great things that are happening, and just hear from these amazing speakers who are really inspirational to me personally and to our whole team. And I think that you will find them pretty amazing. So it's going to be pretty, we want it to be a lot of back and forth dialogue. So we're going to hear from them, and then we're going to open it up for questions at the end. So if you have questions, you can put it in the chat throughout, and our staff members will field those and ask them at the end. So and you'll have a chance to unmute yourselves and be able to talk as well. So yeah, without further ado, I think we're just going to get started with Ross, and he's going to share a little bit of poetry with us today. And before he starts, I just want to introduce him. Ross Gay is the author of 4 books of poetry as well as an essay collection. He's an editor with the Chapbook Press's Q Avenue and Ledgemill Press, and winner of the Kingsley Tufts Award and a finalist for the National Book Award and the National Books Critics Circle Award. Ross is also a founding board member of the Bloomington Community Orchard. And just, I have his book right here, one of his books. If you haven't read this, it's very wonderful. I suggest you get a copy. And we actually have a campaign at University of Indiana, Bloomington. So really cool to be able to connect with you. And without further ado, I will let you share some poetry with us.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, glad to be with you all. Thanks. And it's good to be in conversation with you all. And I'm, yeah, I was gonna say, like, fucking amazing the work you all are doing. It's just great. It's just great. And it's like, I just, I just feel glad and I feel grateful, that there are people like you who, the collective, you and us, who are just like trying to do their best to love on this earth, and so I just want to say I'm grateful to you all, and I'm going to read a couple of these little essays. So the book that I'm going to read from is this book of essays called The Book of Delights. And it's just short little essays. And one day, the way the book came about, one day I was having a nice day. I was in a moment of delight, and I said, oh, I should write a little essay about this moment of delight. And then a bird flew into my ear and said, do it every day for a year. And so I did it every day for a year, and that became the Book of Delights. So I'm just going to read 3 of these, I think. Unless it takes a little long, then I'm going to read 2. It's called Bindweed Delight. Now, because a lot of you are gardeners, you know what I'm talking about. And also, the glyphosate joke might land with this group, There are gardeners reading this who are likely thinking, if I try to turn bindweed, that most destructive, noxious, invasive, life-destroying plant, into a delight, they will bind me and pour glyphosate down my throat. That might be overstatement. All the same, it is a cloying glass half fullness to wrangle bindweed into a delight. No, I'm going for it. Shortly after having spent about 20 minutes pulling it from my newly planted mound of 5 sweet meat squash. Yes, sweet meat. Try to say that without smiling. Out near the woodpile. Already coming up in that mound is all the buckwheat and clover I planted, which, along with the hopefully soon to be thorough coverage of the sweet meat foliage, might crowd out the bindweed. You are right to observe in me the desire not to live with bindweed. which does not in the least negate or supersede my desire to make living with bindweed, which I do, okay. I carefully pull the arrow-headed and somewhat reptilian plants from the soil, which, if left to grow, will quickly find something to ascend by wrapping or binding to it. There is a lovely feeling to gently pulling the sprouts so that the roots slide unbroken and blanched from the soil, putting them in my pockets. I always have bindweed in my pockets. Very careful not to drop any part, which, Lord has it, will reroot and strangle your children as they sleep. I do this work often on my hands and knees, pulling the straw back over here, lifting the leaves of the collards over there. I notice the lettuces are untouched by critters, but the cabbages are getting nibbled. The parsley is starting to get thick. The potatoes need mounding, I notice, sliding a long strand of bindweed from the patch. The beans maybe got washed out from all the rain, and when I pull out this sprout, breaking it at the stem, and dig some to get it out, I notice the worms tunneling through the soil. And if I think I'm in a hurry or think I ought to be in a hurry and quickly walk by to peek at the beds, the tiny bindweed sprouts will sing out to me, "Stay in the garden, stay in the garden." And I often oblige, despite my obligations, getting back on my hands and knees, my thumb and forefinger caressing the emergent things free, all of us rooting around for the light. Thank you. This one is called Pulling Carrots. Pulling carrots. Tomorrow, it's a root day, time on the biodynamic calendar to put your carrots in. Pulling carrots. Today we pulled the carrots from the garden that Stephanie sowed back in March. She planted two kinds, a red kind shaped like a standard kind, and a squat orange kind with a French name, a kind I recall the packet calling a market variety, probably because, like the red kind, it's an eye catcher and sweet, which I learned nibbling a couple of both kinds, like Bugs Bunny, as I pulled them. The word kind, meaning type or variety, which you have noticed I used with some flourish, is among the delights, for it puts the kindness of carrots front and center in this discussion, good for your eyes, yummy, etc. In addition to reminding us that kindness and kin have the same mother. Maybe making those to whom we are kind our kin, to whom even those we might be, and that circle is big. These are kinds, I am thinking, as I snip the feathery green tops, making my way through the pile, holding the roots in one hand, feeling the knobs and grains, the divots where they've grown against a rock or some critter nibbled. Or the 4 or 5 of the red kind that have almost become 2 carrots, carrot legs, in need of some petite pantaloons. The utterly forgettable magic of the carrot, which applies as well to the turnip and radish and potato and garlic and onion and ginger and turmeric and yam and sunchoke and shallot and salsify and maca and sweet potato, is that because much of the food resides under the ground, it probably had to be uncovered. And after the discovering and the uncovering, choosing which ones to replant and replant and replant and replant, and replant, and replant, and replant, until there was the long red kind I'm brushing the soil from, until the squat kind piling up at the bottom of the basket. It was kindness. They are our family. And I'm going to do one more for you.
I was going to say, we want you to do one.
Okay, no one more. This is called Joy is Such a Human Madness, the duff between us. And that little quote is from a Zadie Smith essay called Joy. Joy is such a human madness, the duff between us. Or like this, in healthy forests, which we might imagine to exist mostly above the ground and be wrong in our imagining, given as the bulk of the tree, the roots are reaching through the earth below, there exists a constant communication between those roots and mycelium, where often the ill or weak or stressed are supported by the strong and surplus. By which I mean a tree over there needs nitrogen and a nearby tree has extra. So the hyphae, so close to hyphen, the handshake of the punctuation world, the fungal ambulances ferry it over constantly. This tree to that one to this. And that in a tablespoon of rich fungal duff, a delight, the phrase fungal duff, meaning a healthy forest soil, swirling with the living, the dead make, are miles and miles of hyphae, handshakes, who get a little sugar for their work. The pronoun who turned the mushrooms into people. Yes, it did. Evolved the people into mushrooms. Because in trying to articulate what perhaps joy is, it has occurred to me that among other things, the trees and the mushrooms have shown me this. Joy is the mostly invisible, the underground union between us, you and me, which is, among other things, the great fact of our life and the lives of everyone and thing we love going away. If we sink a spoon into that fact, into the duff between us, we will find it teeming. It will look like all the books ever written. It will look like all the nerves in a body. We might call it sorrow, but we might call it a union. One that, once we notice it, once we bring it into the light, might become flower and food, might be joy. Thank you very much. And again, yeah, thank you, Herbicide Free Campus. Really grateful for your work.
Thank you so much, Ross. If you have any questions, you can hold them till the end or pop them in the chat, and we'll get that at the end. Thank you so much. And that was from, which book was that one from?
That's all from the Book of Delights. Yeah. Cool.
Get your copy now, people. All right, and now we're gonna have Amber Tam. We're gonna hear from her. So good to see you, Amber. Amber Tam is a farmer, horticulturist, and floral designer who works in cannabis, farm education, permaculture, agroforestry, and urban farming. She is working to establish a farm in Central Park as a way of promoting New York City's food sovereignty while creating a reminder of the history of Seneca Village and bringing diversity to Central Park. She leads the food justice division of Dan Barber's Kitchen Farming Project and does a whole heck of a lot more that can't really be covered in this paragraph. Really thankful to have you here, Amber, and yeah, excited to hear from you.
Mackenzie, can you just orient me with some questions for this introduction?
Yeah, we're just really want to hear about your work. If you want to tell us a little bit about what you're doing, 10 minutes of just the work that you're doing, what you feel is important, and where folks can sort of channel their energy and they're like willing to advocate where they can put that energy.
Perfect.
Just want to hear.
Thank you, Mackenzie.
And this is about, there's just so much negativity going on in the world, and we just wanted to take this time to uplift 3 amazing people that are really inspiring to us. And so, yeah, whatever you want to share with us today is great.
Thank you, Mackenzie. Well, I first want to just honor Ross and say that I am such a big, big fan. And I've been a big fan since I was a tiny youth. So I'm so honored to speak after Ross and be on this panel. Like Mackenzie said, my name is Amber. I'm 26 years old. I'm really, really from Brooklyn. My family has been here for 5 generations. And with that being said, me farming was a very revolutionary, spiritual breaking act for me and my family. A lot of my works, like Mackenzie had referenced, has revolved around farming across the US. Because I didn't come from an agricultural background, and because I didn't have the capacity and the life circumstances to go to school, I ended up on the migrant farm trail. And that was one of the biggest blessings and one of the biggest curses of my life in terms of being a Black American mixed race woman that is a citizen of America and having to be on the migrant farm trail with a lot of folks that are undocumented. and residing in that realm with them, although I have a ton of privilege in comparison if we are to compare. And really just learning from the migrant movement what large scale production agriculture looks like. Shortly after that, I then got my permaculture certification and farmer certification in Hawaii, and really learned about what food sovereignty looks like for an island of people. And it was really while I was in Hawaii that I had a revelation that it's not of the highest for me to be orienting to helping other people's communities while my community is in desperate need. And so my orientation, my mission recently changed to really centering ghetto people. And by ghetto people, I mean people who are in a state of poverty living in housing projects, and making sure that their narratives are included in the movement that is food sovereignty, and in the movement that is food justice, but not through the lens of being recipients of food justice, but in the lens of actually learning about food justice so that they can do it for their own communities on their own timing, with their own people, with their own resources. A lot of my work didn't really take off in terms of many eyes viewing it until 2020. And that's because I really want to emphasize this, because I think this is what people need to know. 2020 was really an interesting.
Oh no, she got frozen for a second. Oh.
Hello, y'all. Can y'all
Oh,
hear me?
You're back.
Pardon.
Okay, cool.
Yes, I'm gonna sum it up real quick because I really want to hear more questions, and I do want to talk because I would love to know what the community is oriented to. But 2020 was the coordinate where food shortages were happening due to COVID. And then once, peace be upon him, George Floyd passed, there was this real emphasis on local food movements and Black people. And so really there was like this wave of care that came to Black farmers. And it's still unclear if it was pseudo or not, or if it was real or not, but regardless, we were spotlighted. And I think it was the first time we were ever spotlighted like that. And there isn't that many Black farmers, specifically within my age group, on socials. So there wasn't that many of us that were being spotlighted. Right now, I'm currently moving into prison abolition farming. And my work is now turning to focusing on the folks that are inside prisons, specifically Black and brown men, and how to make sure that they are eating healthy and how to organize with them from the outside for the inside, and making sure that their loved ones are fed. And then my personal project is to make sure that I can be able to teach them how to grow flowers and arrange flowers in hopes that the floral industry will take them in and accept them and give them a chance to liberate themselves once they reach the outside, when they do. So I'm just gonna like keep it there. But like I'm open to all questions about anything. And that's what I'm really here for, is the questions from the people.
Great. And we'll have questions at the end, but we have a few minutes for you to keep going. So if anyone has a quick question or two now, we can take that now and then do more at the end.
I have a question. Hi, Amber. I live in Brooklyn only for the last few months. I cannot claim as long of a longevity there as you have, but I'm just wondering if there's any ways that I can get involved in the awesome work you're doing in Brooklyn directly as a local.
I think what I'm gonna do, and Mackenzie, let me know if this is possible, but I'm happy to hand out Brooklyn resources to this crowd of people that are interested in being connected to the works in Brooklyn. I personally, I'm only really working on the vision for Seneca Village right now in Central Park, which is to have a farm there, so that we can start working on what food sovereignty really looks like on a larger scale outside of community gardens, outside of rooftop gardens, and really calling in the Parks Department to be in alignment with feeding people. Because the other thing I should emphasize is we love farmers markets in New York City, and I love farmers markets too. But I really want to name that all of the farmers in Hudson Valley itself, it would not be enough to feed New York if that's all we were relying on. So I'm happy to like send resources over to Mackenzie in hopes that she can get them out to all of y'all. Would that be possible, Mackenzie?
Yes, definitely. We can send an email to everyone who attended. That would be great. Awesome. And it looks like there's another question. Geoff or Jeff, do you want to, you can unmute yourself and just ask it now before we move on.
Yeah, Amber, I just, it's great what you're doing. I'm aware of what's happening in LA. It has been happening for at least over a decade with the guerrilla gardening, using the boulevards and any kind of green space to grow food. And I can't remember who founded that out there, but I listened to his talk and I'm just wondering if that kind of movement is happening in New York at all, in any of the areas that are free.
I think that this was a thing that was happening in abundance previous to COVID. And I think it's something that fell off previous to COVID. I think the other thing I want to name as somebody whose family has been in New York for a long time is I think before gentrification was complete, which I'm naming for y'all, that gentrification is complete in New York City. And I hold big grief with that. That was something that was very normal. And I think because of gentrification, there has been a bigger policing just of any green spaces in New York City. And I'll directly reference that. I was in Prospect Park the other day doing wild foraging for floral bouquets, and the Parks Department was constantly stopping me. So I think there's still folks willing here to do the guerrilla gardening, but I think that it's too policed here at this point, especially what has been going down with a lot of the tragedies that have been occurring. So I'm praying that there's a revitalization in the near future of that movement.
Is there any efforts to take some of the, get some of the park, like Central Park, any of those areas and turn them into gardening spaces?
That's actually the vision that I've been working on for the last 2 years. But I think the problem with that is it's agricultural rezoning laws, which I'm happy to talk in depth after the next panelist introduces themselves. But really it comes down to making sure that the structures are temporary, and what agriculture requires, what farming, what gardening requires is something that isn't temporary. So it's really getting the Parks Department to really organize with us to recognize that this is something that should be permanent. And the other reality is that a lot of these parks that are now parks were already agricultural land being used to feed many people. So really we want the parks to just return the land for its original use rather than use it just as a green lawn space. But what we're really gonna need is petitions, we're gonna need voices, because right now people think that this is my vision. And I keep telling them that this is actually a vision that a lot of people are holding across the globe.
Awesome. And yeah, Herbicide Free Campus, we'll have to connect about that because we'd love to use our students to help with those petitions and everything. All right, thank you so much. And we'll hold the rest of the questions for after. And now would love to introduce Auntie Maya. Maya is the co-founder of Seeds of Peace and the Institute for Climate and Peace and Peace Studio, a woman who wears many hats. She also serves as an advisor to the Obama Foundation and works closely with their international team to develop programs in the Asia Pacific region. Maya is a faculty specialist for the Matsunaga Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution at the University of Hawaii, Manoa. And really grateful to have Maya here today. I know this is her third webinar of the day, so very, very grateful and looking forward to hearing from you, Maya. And I will, whenever you're ready, I will share my screen and then you can just tell me when to move on to the next slide.
Thank you so much, Mackenzie. And I just want to thank everyone who is part of Herbicide Free Campus. And this is such a delight to me. I am moved and inspired by your energy as well as your compassion and creativity. And also want to thank the Small Planet Institute and the previous speakers who are an inspiration to me. I lived in Brooklyn for a bit, in New York for 9 years, and would have loved to have participated and supported your efforts, Amber. And Ross, your poetry was so wonderfully whimsical and powerful at the same time. And I was feeling it, all of it, about the book. Thank you. And I would love to have you put on, I'm doing a little PowerPoint, and really the idea here is not to make it formal, but really just to, I want to appeal to any visual learners in the crew, and want to, after the poetry and the inspiration, have you in the audience to think about some little mini action planning around climate and peace. So as Mackenzie mentioned, one of my nonprofits is the Institute for Climate and Peace, and we're a climate justice organization that seeks to lift up the frontline community source solutions of the sort that Amber is facilitating. So we take a look here in Hawaii, but also elsewhere in the Asia Pacific at great indigenous wisdom that is present. We highlight the incredible work that is being done to build community among the formerly houseless and tiny homes that are inclusive of gardens, but also bring together housed and houseless. We look at how to revisit tourism to make it less extractive. We take a look at circular economies and ways to build bridges between the Hawaiian community and the Micronesian community. The Compact of Free Association has brought many folks from other Pacifica islands here, and we think about what it means to be a good host and to keep learning and dialogue. So these kinds of things. So the Institute for Climate and Peace is ICP, but it also stands for Information and Education. Collaboration is the C, and connection, and P is for policy transformation at the local, national and international levels. So one thing that I would love for you guys to do is, in keeping with the first request, to write in the chat what it is that you care about protecting and why this work is important, is, just have us think about actually doing a little mini action plan. So much of what I care about is getting everyone on board, all hands on deck, getting everyone involved, figuring out how to enter the stream, and really seeing things like climate as the context in which all of us are living, as opposed to simply an issue, right? Every one of us can do something to contribute to community source local solutions that are in the aggregate making a big difference in building beloved community and increasing justice, equity, access, and doing less harm. So I would love for you guys to think about a guiding star goal in the space of environmental justice. And this is something big that you might seek to accomplish with your life at the very end of your life, when you're 100 and something and you're looking back at a long and productive life. What is one of the guiding stars that helps you to know that you worked hard and in a heart-centered way for our island Earth? And then a near star goal is something that you can activate or do within the next year, perhaps something that is accessible to you by virtue of the skills that you possess, the community that is around you, and the tools and resources that you know about at present. So if you could each just take 1 minute and put a guiding star goal and a near star goal down in chat, and I'll give you 1 minute to do that. Okay, and you can finish this up later if you want, but I love the answers that are there. At present, this idea of Guiding Star being protection of forests around your hometown. Great. And Near Star working towards an herbicide-free LMU campus. Guiding Star banning all toxic pesticides. Near Star getting all universities organic by 2030. Guiding Star making food free. Guiding Star ecological restoration. Near Star becoming informed of what's going on worldwide. Guiding Star finding a way to bring change, real change to society. Reversing the decline of biodiversity, Guiding Star locally produced food that doesn't depend on fossil fuels, and Near Star learning how to dry farm. These are all amazing goals. Can you go to the next slide, please, Mackenzie? So we really look at action planning phases as sort of 6-part, and a lot of it involves backward mapping, and folks can keep putting their Guiding and Near Star goals here. But what I wanted to say is, it's important to really think about positive goal setting. And when I mean positive, I mean like positive peace versus negative peace. Negative peace is the absence of conflict and acute violence. Positive peace is the presence. It's the presence of justice, of understanding, of information, of infrastructure, of organization, of connection, of compassion. It's the presence. And so each of you can contribute significantly to building positive peace. And then the second thing that we really think is important is pretty immediately exploring collaboration. The truth is that there is a lot in the way of resources now, but even more importantly, there are a lot of people who wish to do something, who want to make a contribution and don't know how to impact climate. They see climate as something far away. They see the environment as something that is protected by governments. They see top-down solutions, or they see activists perhaps, or they see technical solutions. But if you begin to engage in discussions in community, you'll find that there are a lot of community solutions that are available to you, and you can establish these partnerships. It's important to prioritize actions in your action planning, because a lot of people get overwhelmed pretty quickly. Climate is overwhelming. There's a lot of climate grief, a lot of climate anxiety. So we really believe in pretty immediately thinking about identifying actions that will allow you to move forward. Those Near Star goals are really critical, but we want to make sure that they, in the aggregate, can lead to eventually, your Guiding Star, and can contribute to what is truly needed. Prioritizing actions is about not simply what feels urgent, but what feels important. Sometimes things get lost for the sake of expediency, right? But keeping those important things in mind and making sure you're moving towards those goals. Next slide, please. Communicating what you're doing is really critically important. So make sure that you are, as you are thinking about climate resilience, resilience is our resistance, and you need to demonstrate your resilience, communicate your goals, your steps, your desires, and invite people to join. And make sure that you are seeking commitments from others around you. And that is an important strategy for implementation. Get people to say, what's one thing you can do? Just one thing. Make sure that they are not overwhelmed. You are, as the herbicide-free campus team, really good at helping people to make these small bets, these small commitments, smallifying them or working on those Near Star goals is really critical. And also don't forget to assess. Success requires assessment of your efficacy. How many people did you reach? Did you do it in a pono way, in a harmonious way, in a loving way? Were you inclusive? Did you cast the net widely enough? Who's not in the room, right? Nothing for us without us. Make sure that everyone feels heard, so assessment is not just about, numerical outcomes. Assessment is also process oriented. Next slide, please. So I really would love for you to think about doing some actions, Near Star and Guiding Star, for climate action. Here are some examples of things that people sometimes disregard as important climate actions, but we feel are critically valuable. And this first one is traditional weather forecasting in Tuvalu. And this research focuses on traditional ecological wisdom. There's a lot of storytelling, and there are numerous efforts in Tuvalu to document not only indicators of approaching weather patterns, but also to do community mapping to help prepare for disasters and to help recover. So that means folks are in community, learning ancient wisdom, but they're also identifying where are sick people, where are elders, where are, folks who struggle with physical challenges and so forth. And everyone knows their responsibility to one another. The middle category, tree management strategies in Indonesia, the middle column rather, is about these two communities that have really shifted over and adapted their land use. And instead of these palm oil forests and other initiatives that degraded the environment, they are now converting and looking at ecological benefits and looking at these long-term strategies in agroforestry that lead to cleaner water and carbon sequestration. And so this land use, starting off small scale and then growing, is something that the village chief oversees, but the community gets involved in and takes complete ownership of, and it is growing, and they are connecting all of these small scale efforts into a larger one. The third column is revitalizing traditional well sites in the Federated States of Micronesia, where they basically are taking traditional methods of water sequestration and catchment and building them up, and around them they are growing gardens, and vegetation has been planted all around, so it's beautiful, it's architectural, and it's useful. Next slide, please. A lot of this again is about positive peace. So really, when we are thinking about actions at the intersection of climate and justice, we really need to think about those positive peace goals. What are the contributions? These three are wonderful examples. Ho'oponopono is a restorative justice practice in Hawaii. We do have to, of course, be careful of cultural appropriation, because a lot of folks have taken Ho'oponopono and made it like Ho'oponopono Light on Insight Timer. I saw it, and on like the Calm app and stuff. But the truth is that people need to be well trained. They have certain cultural roles. There is important protocol, but wherever you are, whatever the restorative practices are, by all means, make use of them. I wanted to emphasize that in Japan, in Hiroshima, Nagasaki, the peace education is so robust. They know what is at stake, and they are transforming all of their spaces with images, art, words, and youth-led movements. In Myanmar, there is this wonderful park where Karen communities and other oppressed communities and harmed communities come to share, preserve their unique culture, but also in this 5,400 square foot kilometers of forested mountainous land are also engaging in indigenous reforestation and land care. Next slide, please. So it's about what we're contributing. So normally what I would do to sort of start off ICP workshop is I would do these where I'm from poems. So I want you guys, just as my time comes to an end, is to, I think I don't have time. I've overextended. I think I'm up to my 10 minutes, but I do want you folks to just take 2 minutes and write down, I am from, what is the environment, sight, sound, smell, touch, texture, what is the community, who is around you, who supports you, who lifts you up, what are the inequalities, the gaps, ouches, hurts, wrongs, what are the losses and the fears, and what is some future hope and action. And just, you can write a 2-minute poem. It's not going to be as good as Ross's right now, but you can take it, massage it, make it your own. And this is sort of something that can artistically embody your near star and guiding star goals and remind you in a strength-based way who you have around you and inside you, you know, to do this important work. So just take 2 minutes and do that. And perhaps put a couple of lines in the chat, and then my time is done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maya. Yeah, we'll give people a couple minutes to do that, and then we will open it up for questions.
Okay, just put a couple of lines in there. I am from sweet pine needles and sharp blackberry thorns. Wow, beautiful. I'm from warm embraces and rainy winters. Rose, that's gorgeous. Keep those coming. I know that it's important that we get to Q&A. I want us to be able to hear more from Ross and Amber, but thank you for this time.
Thank you so much, Maya. We'll make sure to get that PowerPoint to everybody so they can see the full thing as well. All right, so we're gonna, jump into Q&A from the audience. And before we start, I just wanted to, if you came in late, you didn't know anything about Herbicide Free Campus, I just wanted to share that we work with students and groundskeepers across the country and help transition universities from conventional to organic land management. And it relates so much to what the speakers said. And like Amber mentioned, sort of restoring these park lawn spaces back to what they originally looked like. What we talk about a lot with our team is this decolonizing aesthetics and really returning universities to what that area should look like and bringing back native plants and challenging this colonial idea of the lawn. And why can't we grow food, have food forests at college campuses where there's a lot of students who are food insecure and things like that. And so if you're a student, if you know of students, we just opened up our fellowship application that will be open for the next month, and maybe someone on our team can pop in the link. But you can apply to be a fellow and bring this campaign to your campus. And like Maya mentioned, these issues of climate feel so big. And so what really inspired us to bring this campaign originally to our campus was just, it's something that feels tangible. Eliminating herbicides, it's not an easy task, but it's something. And, doing weeding days with the groundskeepers so they don't have to spray Roundup, is a really tangible thing that can help to combat climate anxiety. So just wanted to share a little bit about that. And if you have questions about that, you can reach out to us. And I just wanted to open it up for questions. And I had one for Ross. I just was curious how your poetry relates to your thoughts about ecology and your farming, and whether it inspires your poetry or your farming can sort of just decompress you after writing. Like, how do you see your land-based work and your writing as connected?
Yeah, it's a great question. It would take hours, I think, days to get to the bottom of that. But among the things that, I'll just say two things real quick. One is that, if you're kind of in relationship with the earth, as I'm trying, learning to do and trying to do, I'm actually a new gardener. I've only been gardening for like 15 years, and so I'm, although I grew up in an apartment complex and we had like a little woods right next to the highway, I-95, and there would be stuff that we would be paying close attention to. But that's one of the things that I feel like if you are gardening in a certain kind of way, actually, in a way that, if you're gardening in a way, say that you're not actually inclined to use herbicides, for instance, you're inclined to be like, I wonder what is the best way. How do I listen? How do I listen to the earth? And how do I listen to these seeds? And how do I listen to these plants? And I listen to these flowers, these pollinators in this weather. And, and how do I ask questions? There's a kind of like profound listening that gardening, I think, gardening, orcharding, whatever it is that we do, can teach us, like today, there's a plant that I love and it's called gumi. And gumi makes this little, delicious berry, and plant fixes nitrogen, and the flowers, they are the most delicious. They're beautiful. They're sort of pale gold, and they have a kind of miraculous shape. All flowers do. But this one, the first one opened today. I left early in the morning and I came back and it was open. I smelled it earlier this morning. I was like, oh, and then I was like, oh, it didn't open yet. I came back and one of those flowers was open, and I was like, that's a reason to stay alive. That's a reason to be alive. And it's a kind of just like, I wouldn't have done that 15 years ago. I would have been like, oh, not like I was completely disconnected, but I would not have known to notice of the 2,000 flowers that one had opened. I wouldn't have done that. That's one thing. The other thing that I'll just say is that, the garden, the land, et cetera, it's just like these places where the metaphor itself, we are trained in metaphor when you're working with the land. Like you do not have to tax your imagination very hard to realize that inside of one seed, one collard seed, say, is not only, say that seed gets planted and it makes, does its cycle, goes to seed, maybe it makes 1,000 seeds, say, whatever, maybe it's just 500. Let's say 1,000. That plant, then those 1,000 seeds can make plants that would go through the thing and make another 1,000. I'm not good at math. That's more food than all of us could eat in a year, for sure. Which is to say that inside of a seed is the table at which all of us can sit together and be nourished. That's inside a seed. You hold a seed, you could flick it off the table and not even know you did it. That's a seed. Which is a long way of saying you are training in metaphor the whole time when you're working in a garden, and it's a kind of magic that you get to just be with and study and listen to. So I'm sorry I went off, but that's a good question.
I love that. Thank you. Yeah, we have a small enough group where if you want to just, you could put your question in the chat and I can read it. But if anyone has questions, feel free to just unmute yourself and you can ask any of the panelists. We have about 5 more minutes till we wrap up.
I have a quick question for Amber. You talked about working with people that have been previously or currently incarcerated. Can you talk a little bit about how your inspiration for that work started or where that came from and how that has been going? I just would love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. I think the first thing to name is that New York State has, a lot of prisons. And I think a lot of people who come to New York City from other places don't recognize, one, how big New York State is, and two, there's like upwards of 10 prisons in upstate New York. And this is why, New York City is deeply in protesting work with NYPD, because a lot of what goes on in this city leads to those prisons being packed. Now, for me personally, I grew up in all projects in New York City by the water. So all housing projects in Coney Island, in Far Rock, in Canarsie, and in upper Manhattan. And so I think my whole livity and my whole life and my whole family has been deeply embedded in the prison industrial complex. I'll be 100% transparent and name that my father murdered my mom and is currently in prison. And I've been working with him to organize inside how to get him food while working on the outside and doing that work. So that's really the origins of all of my work. I think when I put my mother's body in the earth, and this is why I'm glad that Ross just spoke about the seed, because my narrative is my mother was the biggest seed I've ever planted in my life. And to watch my mother decompose into the earth, the only way that I can commune with my ancestors and heal myself while helping others all at the same time is through doing these farm works. But when it comes down to, I guess, hearing my family speak about their injustices in the prison industrial complex, and then just ghetto living my whole life, it feels like the most righteous thing to do. I think I'm very new and orienting to this work. And so I would really invite you to follow me on any social medias, which is just Amber Tam, because that's where I'll be sharing a lot of the newness of integrating into this work and integrating into new communities doing this work. In conclusion, I would name that I would just really encourage people to look into the prison industrial complex before we even get to prison abolition farming, and then also really encourage folks to get really well informed on political education and what abolition means to them through political education.
Thank you so much, Amber.
Thank you for sharing that. And also panelists, if you all have questions for each other too, feel free to.
I just want to say, Mackenzie, shout out to you. Sorry, I was late into this call. Mackenzie, she is a beach volleyball alum at from UC Berkeley, graduated a few years ago. I work in Cal Athletics, and so it's just an honor to share this space with you and to see you be the leader who you are. We are very proud of you and all of your teammates, et cetera. And thank you everyone else. I just wanted to make a comment to Ross. I didn't know 15 years of doing something meant we were new into something. So that perspective shift is crazy on me right now. Like, I thought you were going to say I've been doing it for 15 months or 15 weeks. You said for 15 years. Much respect to that and to the work that you do. And so, yeah, again, just thank you everyone for having me, for having us. I'm learning, I'm growing, and thank you all.
Thank you so much, Bobby. Honestly, shout out to Bobby. I was in a meeting with him like 20 minutes before this thing happened, and I mentioned it to him. And then as soon as we got off the call, he bought a ticket and it showed up. So thank you, Bobby. And just one of those people who always is empowering students, always giving people opportunities and just, yeah, the work that you do. And you really believed in us from the beginning when me and Bridget started this, and had a lot of awesome talks in your office, and you always hype us up. So thank you for the work that you do. It's really important work. So, all right. Does anyone have any last things to share? Can take about one more question. Anyone have anything? Yeah, we're getting a lot of thanks in the chat. Feel free if you have anything to say.
I just
Mackenzie,
sorry, Ross.
no, you go.
I was just going to say thank you. Like Mackenzie said, these days it's sometimes hard to find hope, and you three have given me a lot of hope today. So thank you.
Back at you, all of you. Thank you. And hope we can stay connected on some level. And there's all sorts of shared endeavor here, and I would love to uplift some of your various and varying efforts, and yeah, so stay in touch.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you all so much.
Aloha.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.